past creates our future and future creates our present, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
So we have the past misfiled in our future.
Mhm.
That's why the future that's why the present keeps looking like the past, because we're living into the future in which the past has been filed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was an answer of that stuff, but we haven't heard its answer with
Right, I'm going to answer this.
with mirror neurons and.
I'm going to answer that now.
Okay.
Right. So that is how your brain works, right? Because it has patterns that it's constantly recognizing, and it decides before you decide what you're going to do because of the patterns.
Yes.
Right? And that has to do with this past that's misfiled in the future. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, what you're asking is, how do you program your brain so what it does what you want to do? Yes? Are you up to speed with what I'm saying? Do you understand? Are you with me? Okay. All right. All right, so what you want your brain to do is to be automatic for what you say, not what the default past is saying, right? So this is how you do it. There's the 5 steps. It's right here. Creating a created future. So the first step is to realize the past is in the future. So your attitudes, your point of view, your strongly held beliefs, how you know it's going to be your hoped for future, the future that you're afraid of, it helps to distinguish what that is that's in your future. Right? So once you distinguish what that is, you can take it, parts of it anyway, and put it back in the past. So now you have some room in your future drawer. You create something. So now you can create a created future. So you speculate with the parties that are involved in this future about what you could create. And this future, the realization of which fulfills the matter, see in line 2, of fundamental interest or importance to the relative parties. So you want a future that fulfills your concerns and the concerns of the relevant parties. In the realizing of that created future, the people you're leading must see an opportunity to fulfill their concerns. In the realizing of that future, the people you are leading must see an opportunity for self-expression. So you have opportunity to fulfill their concerns, an opportunity for self-expression. In the realizing that future, the people you are leading must see an opportunity for them to personally make a noteworthy contribution to the realization of that future. Okay? Now, when the future you're creating is true to these 5 elements, and you have the textbook so you can review this. When the future you're creating is true to the 5 elements of this design context for creating a created future, it will be a future that leaves you and the people you are leading moved, touched, and inspired. For it to become the future into which you and the people you are leading are actually living into, it's critical that there be a significant level of emotion, feeling, and attitude associated with that future. For the brain, that means the future is significant. So now you've got a future that you've created that fulfills the concerns of the relevant parties. And the people see that they can make a difference with that and make a significant difference. Okay? Okay. So, if the future you are creating is true to the 5 elements of the design context for a created future, and you and the people you are leading are moved, touched, and inspired by that future, you will have created a pattern in the brain that operates like a predicted future. However, it will have even more energy than the pattern of the past-derived predicted future. Especially the default past-derived future from which you have removed all the significance. You remove the significance by seeing what it is, by seeing what it, in the mirror neurons, recreating how it is for someone else over there, here. That removes the significance from it, which is like taking it out of the future drawer. And you do the 5 steps, and now you've created a pattern in your brain.
Can you explain these 5 steps, like simply?
Simply?
Yeah.
Like
To understand 5 steps.
on the
Alright, these 5 steps.
On the examples,
Using an example.
if you will have.
Okay. I'm torn about using my personal example about bringing the leadership course here,
I think.
or about what you're going through in Ukraine. So, like, those would be two good examples. And I'm thinking the one that you're going through will get messy. Will get messy.
Because yours is easy to understand.
Well,
You give us the stuff we want, and we fulfill our promises and do all.
yeah. See, you have some significance attached with the future of Ukraine, right? And Yanukovych, yeah. Yanukovych, right? You have some strongly held beliefs about him and the Russians, and so there's some strongly held beliefs and positions and all of that, and you would have to be willing to take that significant future and put it in the past. Okay? And you would also have to see that if it keeps going like it's going, everything will be okay. It doesn't matter. Yukhanovich will end up in prison, and Julia will be in charge, or the boxer guy will be in charge, and then they'll put their opponents in prison, right? And then they'll start stealing money from, right? And then you'll join Europe, and Europe will rape Ukraine because your prices will have been driven so deeply that it'll make it good. I'll want to come over here and buy up as much real estate as I can. And then the Ukrainian people will be marginalized, but you would have to see that it would be all right if all of that turned out that way. If it just keeps going, you'll be okay. You've been okay since Kyiv Rus. You'll be okay. Okay? But if you could take all of that, including my beliefs and how I think it might go, and and all of that, we could take all that and put it in the past and create a created future. Like, let's say, I'm just speculating. Ukraine is flourishes. Ukraine is a flourishing economy in a country. It has a flourishing economy in a country, right? So that's the future we're going to create. Now we have all this in the past. So while we might hold that past up to see what we could see from that past, we're not going to act from the past. Because we got that. So now looking from Ukraine being a prosperous country, right, you would need to see, right, that you could make a difference in engaging with the project. Yeah? A significant difference. And so then you have some emotion, you're moved and inspired by it, you think this is a great thing. So now you've reprogrammed your brain. All of our brains are now programmed for Ukraine as a prosperous future. Now that could maybe look like letting Yanukovych, be in power till the elections on 2015 and then he's replaced. Or it could look like a complete blown out World War III. We don't know, but our brains would be programmed for the right actions to take when we're confronted with choices about what to do. Right? I mean, you know, Yanukovych might not be, everything he's saying might not be bad. Maybe, you know, if you just hold on. See, that's a strongly held opinion and belief that's got to get put in the past. But if you all sign the stuff with EU, and I would love for it to see, you know, that's my opinion, but Russia is going to cut off your gas and is going to stop buying chocolate, which they already did, and other products, and Ukraine is going to be strangled, right? And then there probably will be a revolution. They'll sign the European Union, and then the people, the Europeans would love to come over here and buy up your country because it's going to be so cheap. The hryvnia is going to go to record lows. You're going to enter a huge... Now, so maybe Yanukovych maybe has a little good idea to kind of go along. The European Union can't buy you out. Like they're broke themselves. They don't have any money to give Ukraine. Like they did that with a couple countries, and then they didn't do that with a couple other countries, and they're having a very hard time. And all the European Union is essentially broke. And you want to be part of a broke country, and that way it kind of doesn't make sense. But if you could hold out, if you could hold out for a little bit and keep the pressure on Yanukovych, you know, I think Yanukovych will eventually, I don't know, maybe he's completely untrustworthy because he never honors his word. I don't know.
I think that all that stuff is, that's okay, it makes perfect sense. But the revolution stuff is not about the European Union today. The revolution stuff is because people hate the government and they don't create the future that they want. They just want to have a moment of relief. They want blood of that people and just like to enjoy the process.
I know, but you always hate your government. That's nothing new.
Yeah, no, actually they have their future. They have future. They see the political system without Yanukovych and
okay. So this is why I didn't want to take this as an example, because I don't want to go, you know, down that. But if you would create a future in which Ukraine is prosperous country, and you look from there, you might deal with Russia one way and European Union another way, so that you don't fall in this trap in which the hryvnia, it's already overvalued and propped up. So it's going to take a hit anyway. And you just don't want your country trashed by making some reckless decision, and I don't know if that is or not.
We know that European Union is not the best, but we always need to choose from two beds.
I know.
And because if we want to choose European Union, which I don't like especially a lot, the Russia will eat us. So,
yes. Yeah.
So we have no choice, because we want laws that are working, and we don't want people to be beaten in police, which is constantly for thousands of years.
Yes. True. Exactly. And I got your communication. So that's what a leader does.
We got you.
You get the person's communication, and I don't change it. I just get the communication. That kind of softens up the positions a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that is the position that you want to put in the past, because if you take that position and put it into the future, you're going to get more of the past. You will, because it's not, that kind of speaking isn't out of a stand called Ukraine flourishes. That speaking is out of the past. So anytime somebody says something like that, you just have to get the communication. I got it that he sees that way, and it's a predicament, and it really seems to be that way. It really is that.
This context
but we also got your way, and it makes perfect sense about that green will fall, but why I'm talking this because I believe that I can live when green is down and with high prices, but I can't live in the country where I can't believe to police officer or something like
I
that.
understand. I get it. I got it. Anything else about that? See, so what a leader would do is they would keep saying, okay, what else? Anything else about that? I got it. What else do you believe? What else do you think will surely happen? And you just keep getting the communication and getting the communication until there's kind of like a clearing there. Okay? And then once there's a clearing there, you can create a future called Ukraine Flourishes, or whatever future that we would want to create that we could give our lives to, or that would be moving and inspiring, and that would give us lots of different moves. It could give us signing a little bit with the EU, and it could be a little bit playing with Putin, right? And then we could do this, and then we could do that, but our brains would be selecting, not this already, always, almost certain past. Is that a good enough example?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Anything else about any of that? So you can read this part about standing in the future. So we would stand in that future and look back to the present, not
From the past to the future.
yeah.
But but you should understand us too, because this stuff is painful for us, and it's hard to make it in the past.
I know.
But
I totally get it, how painful it is. It is.
But it should be in the past because it's already past in our creative future.
As a consequence, the neural patterns that generate your and the people you are leading's way of being, their attitude, state of mind, feelings and emotions, bodily states, thoughts and thought processes, including creative imagination and planning, and the associated neural patterns that generate your and the people you are leading's actions will be consistent with realizing this created future. In other words, the way of being and acting for you and the people you are leading will naturally be consistent with realizing that created future. Give the brain a created future that matches the 5 elements of the design context for the created future, and it will make way of being and acting in the present consistent with realizing that created future. And it will do it before you decide. It will be like balance when you get on a bicycle. It will use you. All right. So here's this, who you need to be. You can read that. We went over that, right? Who you need to be when creating a created future. So, the opportunity to fulfill your concerns. Is there people out there? Are they marching?
What's it?
Do you start?
They say Kyiv, get up.
They're saying what?
Kyiv, get up.
Get what?
Kyiv, get up. They say.
Wow. Okay. Are these students?
I think so.
Huh?
Are these students?
Yes, I think
Are they gonna then march over?
they're gathering, I think.
For what?
Gathering. Making a group.
Gathering.
Yes. And they're gonna go to stuff.
Okay, so when you have this context, we've covered this context. When you cover this context here, this framework, does everybody want to go to the window and look, and then you can come back?
Yeah.
Go to the window and look. I want to go to the window and look too. Yeah, people are just milling around like always, huh?
past. Let's put it in the past.
They disappeared, well, when you...
Yeah. Let's put it into the past.
And create,
But can this past, can this past be a part of our creative future?
Can what?
Can this past can be a part of our
Well,
creative future?
what
Like
happens?
the step.
What happens is you hold the past up behind you, not so that it's what you look through, but to shed some light on what.
That you have.
Maybe you have.
I kicked the plug out, and now.
Maybe you have like
It's up.
stand or something.
Huh?
You have.
It's something.
No.
Here it's coming. Here we go. It just had to kind of warm up. So you have the contextual framework. This is the part where we programmed your brains. You programmed your brains while you were in this course. Your brains are now programmed to be a leader and exercise leadership effectively. When you go through these, and that's built on this, it programs your brain. So this is the contextual framework right here. Built on a foundation of integrity, authenticity, something bigger than yourself and cause in the matter. Leadership is phenomenon. That's what you see when you see somebody exercising leadership, and it happens in language. Then the realm of possibility, any way of being and action is possible. Not that you would take any and all of them. And then the definition and the domain, which is a temporal domain of the future. And this definition is actually all that.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You said that it could be seen when people, when it comes out, that this person is exercising leadership effectively, yes?
When what comes out?
When you're speaking, you can see, when some person is speaking, you can see that she exercises leadership effectively.
Yeah.
So, can you see this stuff in us after programming our brain?
Can I see it?
Yeah.
So what? Oh, okay. So when it's happening is when you start talking about integrity and say, "Oh, I need to clean up my integrity because my integrity's out." That's a leader talking. Yeah? And when somebody's saying, well, okay, let's see, so how do you do this? And, being a demand for coaching, that's a leader speaking. So your whole organization is towards how are we going to impact the future? That's a leader speaking because the domain that you're working in is the domain of the future. But you haven't gotten that until just now. So when you put this all together, what emerges is the being and action of leadership. So your brains are all programmed as of right now. All right. Did you do this? Or seeing how you were leading people? I'm looking at you.
I know.
You
A
did?
little bit, yes.
Yeah? Okay. Have you left people in a better place
Sometimes, but
than they were before you got there, huh?
mostly yes.
Mostly yes. So this was the homework from the last section. How are you leaving people? See what you can do to leave people in a better place than they were before you got there. That was just some homework. All right, so now, we're going to do this part. This is the third element. This is fun, but it's kind of intrusive also. A future that wasn't going to happen. We're now going to begin to touch on the third of three fundamental structural elements that make up this course. That is to remove the way from the way you wound up being that what limits or distorts your natural self-expression. So we're going to remove from the way you wound up being the things that limit and distort your natural self-expression. Having mastered a context with the power to give you the being and action of a leader and effective exercise of leadership as your natural self-expression, what is left is to remove from the way you wound up being what limits or distorts your natural self-expression. Most of us think that the way we are being and acting is our natural self-expression. However, our natural self-expression is an unconstrained freedom to be. And that freedom is limited and distorted by certain ontological constraints that have become a fixed part of the way we wound up being. As a result of these constraints on our freedom to be, each of us gets left with idiosyncratic, fixed, personal ways of being and acting that allow us to succeed in some situations, but which leave us, at best, getting by in others, and unfortunately, failing in yet others. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. Okay. What is undistinguished runs you? It has been said, I'm going to change the way this thing does this. All right. As has been said, if there's anything in life or about you yourself that is undistinguished by you, or is invisible for you, you have no access to it, and therefore you cannot do anything about it. That which is undistinguished is out of your control, functions without your permission, and as a result, when it is triggered, it constrains and shapes your way of being and your actions. And because it is undistinguished, you don't even know that your way of being and your actions are being constrained and shaped. Because you have no access to those ways of being and acting, you can do nothing about them. When what is undistinguished is triggered, you are on automatic, and you don't even know that you are on automatic. That is, you have no choice about the way you're being or acting. So we're going to do perceptual constraints first. All right. Usually if I drop the cursor to the bottom, I can make these things slide back and forth, but right now I'm just stuck with up and down. All right, an example of a physical perceptual constraint. What we don't see of what we are dealing with. What follows in the next 4-minute video is an example of a physical perceptual constraint, a product of the way our brain functions, what psychologists term change blindness. In our terms, this is the study of what our brain sees, not what is in front of us. That is, not what our eyes see. For those of you, blah. Okay, so we're going to see this video.
Can you explain what is perceptual constraints more deeply?
Perceptual, how you perceive things. We perceive things with our eyes and what we, there's ways we perceive with our ears.
Mm-hmm.
This is a physical, perceptual, how we perceive things, constraint. It's called change blindness.
The difference between these two men seems obvious. Their faces are different, their hair is different, even their shirts are a different colour. And yet an experiment by psychologists Dan Simons and Chris Chabris at Harvard reveals that our brains actually process very little of what comes in through the eyes.
In this experiment, a subject comes up to a counter and a first experimenter hands them a consent form. As soon as they finish signing the consent form, They hand it back to the first experimenter, who then takes the consent form, ducks down behind the counter and put it away, and a different experimenter then stands up and hands the subject a packet of information and sends them into a hallway where we ask them questions about it.
This wonderful experiment uncovers an aspect of the brain's attention system known as change blindness.
Change blindness is the idea that we often miss large changes to our visual world from one view to the next. We're often not able to see large changes that would appear to be perfectly obvious to somebody who knows they're going to happen.
And incredibly, in 75% of cases, the subjects don't notice a thing.
The lady who took me up here, she opened the door for me and told me to walk over to the desk. I think there was a scientific experiment. And a man there gave me a form to sign.
There was the guy standing under a big sign that said experiment. And to my left, there was like a pot with some dirt in it and some plastic containers.
Oh, I filled out a form.
How long would it be about before it's...
And I asked him how long it would take. He said about 10, 15 minutes or so.
I guess after time.
Did you notice anything unusual at all after you signed the consent form?
I just signed it and I didn't even pay attention to anything that was written on it.
Okay. After you handed it back to him, did you notice anything unusual happen at all?
If you could just take this into the next
No,
one.
no, I probably wasn't even looking that direction. I turned and looked towards the clear door. I saw some people there.
Okay.
Then I turned back and looked at him for a second.
Okay. Did you notice anything unusual at all after you signed the consent form?
No.
This will only take about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It'll be real short.
Okay.
The person who stood up was actually a different person.
Okay.
I gather you didn't notice that was different. A different person actually stood up and handed you this form and sent you out to work with me. I gather from your reaction you didn't notice that?
No.
Okay. Don't feel bad about that. Actually, most of the time we find about 75% of people don't notice.
You serious?
Yeah. The person who stood up with the packet was actually a different person
Wow.
than the first person.
That is incredible.
So I gather you didn't see it.
I didn't catch that, no.
Okay.
What's really interesting is that some people notice these changes and other people don't notice these changes.
Okay, if you could just take this.
And we really don't yet have a good idea what separates those people who don't from those people who do. It might be that there are individual differences and some people are better able to detect these sorts of changes. But it's also possible that it's just coincidence, that the people who noticed it just happened to be focusing on a feature that changed. They just happened to be paying attention to the color of the person's shirt. And the people who failed to notice it just happened to be paying attention to something else.
Results of the change blindness test. While most of us believe we see the world and what we are dealing with as it is, that, as we have just observed, is clearly false. As some neuroscientists have explained, we see what our brain sees, not what our eyes see. If visual sensations were primarily received rather than constructed by the brain, you'd expect that most of the fibers going to the brain's primary visual cortex would come from the retina. Instead, scientists have found that only 20% do. 80% come downward from regions of the brain governing functions like memory. Richard Gregory, a prominent British neuropsychologist, estimates that visual perception is more than 90% memory and less than 10% sensory nerve signals. Being aware that we don't always see what is in front of us. The change blindness demonstration in the video is but one of the myriad physical perceptual constraints imposed by the way our brain functions. One important point to get from this example is that we do not perceive the world as it is. our physical perceptual constraints limit and shape our perception of what we are dealing with. However, in our perception of the world, others, and ourselves, virtually none of us ever takes into account the constraining and shaping imposed by these various physical perceptual constraints. The erroneous belief that we see the world, others, and ourselves as each of these actually is a product of our everyday common sense worldview. This worldview leaves us blind to the fact that we are blind and unquestionable constraint. Dealing with our physical perceptual constraints. While we may not be able to alter the way our brain functions in producing these physical perceptual